On the 19th of March, the funerals of those murdered in Milltown Cemetery by Michael Stone took place.
Oh, farewell, the streets of sorrow, and farewell, you streets of pain. I'll not return to feel more sorrow, nor to see more young men slain. So farewell, you streets of sorrow. No, I'll not return to feel more sorrow.
IRA volunteer Kevin Brady's funeral began quietly enough. Republican stewards with two-way radios monitored the funeral cortege as it inched along the Andersonstown Road.
So farewell, you streets of sorrow. And farewell.
But as the procession reached Casement Park, a car with two male occupants drove directly towards the crowd. The car had ignored previous warnings from stewards, and although the driver could clearly see the cortege up ahead of him, he took no opportunity to turn off onto a side street. Instead, he accelerated at high speed and mounted a footpath, narrowly missing several of those who had gathered to line the route. The car then quickly reversed, but was cut off by several black taxis, which were at the head of the cortege. Believing the funeral was under attack, men began to surround the vehicle. One of the occupants produced a handgun and opened fire. The crowd pulled back for a second before confronting the occupants again. Volunteers of the IRA arrived on the scene, and both men were subsequently shot. It transpired that the two were armed, undercover British soldiers. It has never been fully explained why the two were there. The British government, the media, and politicians condemned the people of West Belfast as savages for what had happened to the two undercover soldiers. A sustained campaign of demonisation, censorship and aggression against our community was part of the British backlash, despite what had previously happened in Milltown Cemetery. Over 30 people, known as the Casement accused, were imprisoned in another travesty of so-called justice perpetrated against our community by the British oppressors. 6 months after all these tragic events, the inquests into the death of Mairead, Dan and Sean was to be held in Gibraltar. No one had much faith in this process, as it had become abundantly clear that the Gibraltar police, the British government and the British state forces were complicit in the summary execution of the 3 volunteers. No scene of crime procedures had been followed, pathologists had not been given access to proper facilities, vital evidence had been destroyed, and witnesses were intimidated, threatened and slandered. Public interest immunity certificates were issued by the British government, who was determined that the truth would not get out. Lies and cover stories were concocted and rehearsed. The British knew that the 3 volunteers were unarmed and that their car did not contain any device. Every obstacle was thrown at the families, despite the very able efforts of their lawyer, Paddy McGrory. And in a perverse verdict which went against all the evidence, it was deemed that what had happened in Gibraltar to Mairead Farrell, Dan McCann and Sean Savage was a lawful act. The families would not accept this and eventually brought the case to the European Court of Human Rights. On the 27th of September 1995, 7 years and 6 months after the killings, the court found the British government guilty of unlawfully killing Mairead, Dan and Sean. Britain stated that they would ignore the ruling and would do so again. And acting with impunity, less than a year after the verdict, another young, unarmed IRA volunteer Diarmid O'Neill was shot dead in similar circumstances in a house in London. "20 years have passed since we buried our dead, those who died in the streets of Gibraltar and the streets of Belfast. Although circumstances are very different in the Ireland of today, the struggle for national self-determination continues with the same resolve. It is for us, the family, friends and comrades of those who died, to remember how the advances of today were made. Our ultimate tribute must and will be the end of the British occupation of our country and the establishment of the Republic that Mairead, Dan and Sean swore allegiance to when they joined Óglaigh na hÉireann. It is for us to remember them, to honour them. It is for us to emulate their commitment and their dedication. It is for us to make their dream of freedom a reality. They deserve no less. We can do no less. And it is then we will see the rising of the moon."
Your mind's your strongest weapon, and that's how we'll always counteract whatever they do, because they can't control their minds, and they can't get inside them, and that's their failure.